welcome to part 2 of the Self-Care Rebellion. Poe, Monique and I are really, really excited to be back and talking more about something that is near and dear to all of our hearts. Just this idea that is simultaneously excellent and terrifying, that self-care is going to become part of our core competencies. I'm glad that we've sort of been almost forced to talk about it now. But I'm scared as well that it's going to become another checkbox, another thing to tick off at the end of the year of like, yeah, I did something related to self-care and that's it. When the whole purpose of the Self-Care Rebellion is that we need to talk about self-care differently and we need to be doing it differently, because what we have been doing is just not working. And that became very, 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 very clear after part 1, when we got so much amazing feedback, really, really just lovely and incredibly gratifying feedback, that this was a conversation a lot of people had wanted to have and didn't kind of know how to, or didn't know how to start it. So that was pretty amazing. That was really quite good. But we're going to try and be very good this time and not talk over each other as much and pass along. So don't take it as lack of enthusiasm. It's just going to be, it was a little bit of a nightmare to edit last time. So we're going to try and be kinder to ourselves and make it a bit easier. And thank you for everyone who attended the first one, watched the replays, commented, sent us that feedback. You don't understand how amazingly good that was to receive. That was incredibly heartwarming is the best way to describe it, I think. And thank you to everyone who completed the survey on what you wanted to see in part 2. We got one person who very succinctly said one of the things that they wanted part 2 to cover was, is burnout and our issues with self-care, is it related to all of our anxiety, perfectionism, self-sacrifice, or is it more related to the amount of work and the expectations on our profession, in the organizations that we work within, things like having to follow even more competencies than previously, and which is it that's making us feel not good enough and leading to that sense of feeling not competent enough. And I hope that today's session will really answer that question, because all three of us, although we come at it from different angles, all agree that it's not an either or, it's an all of the above. There's the personal aspects, absolutely, and we all address that in different ways. There's the professional aspects, absolutely, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement on that one. I don't know how that works. And then there is absolutely individual organizations, workplaces, and the particular pressures or environments that are going on there. So what we overwhelmingly got the sense of was tonight's session needs to be more about, well, what do we do? So we've identified there's a problem. Depending on what study you read, somewhere between half and 2/3 of us are burnt out or emotionally exhausted at any one time in this profession, which is not good. That's really quite disheartening. And less than 8% of us have ever done any formal training on self-care and burnout prevention. There's something really askew here. So tonight we really wanted to share with you our approaches, our practical takeaways, a couple of them obviously, because there's 3 of us and 3 different approaches and a lot of information that we could cover. But we really wanted to talk about, this is how our thinking around self-care has changed and evolved over the years into our approaches, our programs, our takeaways. And so I thought we might start off with, we could do intros, I suppose, but we'll put bios in the description section of the video and you can read more about each of us. But we're all psychologists. We've all got our own personal experience of burnout, and we've come together to share a little bit about what we've learned, what we wish we'd known previously, and tonight, what we can do about it. So I'll kick off and we'll each talk a little bit about what we think, or what some examples of what sustainable self-care or burnout prevention looks like, given some of the limitations, or some of the expectations inherent in our profession and some of the professional barriers and things like that, without getting into any sort of, burnout cliches or myths. So I'll kick things off with potentially a controversial addition, but one of the things that I've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years really doing a deep dive into is using artificial intelligence to help support myself, my practice manager, the rest of my team, with the day-to-day stuff that takes energy, takes time, but that doesn't really need to be done by us in particular. So, I don't believe AI is ever going to fully replace therapists, because it's all about that connection, and you can't have, as much as I love my chat GPT bots and all of that sort of stuff, it's not the same. It is not the same as talking to someone else, having that connection, feeling seen and validated by another human being. I don't want AI to do the stuff that I enjoy doing. That would be pointless. But when it comes to writing the 10th letter to a GP for a client I've been seeing for 6 years with, a long-term mental health condition that's never going to change, just supporting and maintaining so that it doesn't get worse, I don't need to write that letter for the 10th time. That's something that AI can do really, really well, save me 10 minutes and just a little bit of mental energy. Because the number of times I would write those letters, and even though by that stage it's a bit of a cut and paste job from the previous 9 letters or whatever, but I would resent to do it. I'm like, this is boring and this is pointless, and why am I doing this? If they'd changed, if things had gotten worse or things had gotten drastically better, I would have let the doctor know already. So, it's a checkbox exercise. It's annoying. And then I've got to deal with that resentment, and I've got to do a little bit of finishing the stress cycle, and I can just get AI to do it, and I don't get resentful or angry or annoyed, and I save myself 10 minutes. And over the course of a week, that might be a full hour. The trick then is, of course, not filling up that hour with more work. Yeah, that's the other that's the other tricky bit. But a lot of my practical takeaways and my non-sexy approach to self-care through Sparks is planning, planning out your year in advance, making sure you've booked time out for doing your professional development, for booking those runaround days when you can get in the dentist appointment and the doctor's appointment and go to the post office and all that sort of stuff. Booking out those holidays, making sure you've actually booked out time, even if you don't have anything planned, but just going, I'm going to block out this time now, because I know if I wait until September, it's not going to happen. But if I block out September now, I'll take that time off, and I'll either, book a holiday or something in that time, or I'll just take the time off. You don't have to go away to have a holiday. You can just have a little bit of a staycation, but have a bit of a break. Planning out your catch-ups with friends, making sure that if you look back over the last year, how many people have you caught up with that you wanted to be spending time with? And if not, why not? And it's usually because everybody gets busy. It's like, oh, we should catch up. And then it's 3 months before you can catch up. And, so plan it out in advance. Do your planning sessions with a friend. We do them in Sparks, usually at the end of the year. Even, and this might be a bit much for people, say you can only take 2 weeks holidays. That's all you've got. Booking out the day before you go so that you're not rushing around like crazy before you get on the plane or you drive off or whatever. Don't work the day before or the morning that you're about to leave. You know who you are. I've had several conversations about this in the last couple of weeks. You know who you are. So you get there and you collapse and you're sick and you're just exhausted and you're catching up for the whole holiday. And then you get back and you book yourself in to start the next day. I'm not saying I have never been guilty of it. I definitely have. I once got off an international flight at like 10 p.m. and worked the next day. It's so stupid. It's just, it's not helpful.
That recently in my last trip. I'm glad that I didn't go all the way straight to work.
Exactly. Because it's so if you've only got those 2 weeks, just go for 12 days, but give yourself the day before and after to prepare and to recover. So self-care sometimes can be really, really, really unsexy, is my takeaway. It can be booking in a doctor's appointment. It can be making sure that you've had your cholesterol test done. It can be really boring, basic stuff, but so important, so important. And your future self will thank you so much when you get to that day and go, I'm so glad I booked this out. This is so good. When those unexpected things come up, oh, that's all right. I know I've got an admin day booked up next week. I'll have time to catch up with it then. It makes such a big difference and something really cool to look forward to. So that's sort of my one example of practical takeaways. So I'm going to hand over to Poe now.
Such been holding the talking stick? No. So good. I was like writing down ideas from you, Janelle, because I don't really plan the run around day, but it is exactly what I need as a neurodivergence. Like I usually would just get really hectic to plan all of those like errands day, but like I really don't have those time. And then in the end, that's the time where I get most flustered. So good tips there. So I think for me, one of those practical ideas is to actually think about every day actively managing and meeting our own needs and doing the energy management stuff, like, from the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual sense to really allow ourselves to look after ourselves. I think a lot of the time, even if we are not therapists, we still need to look after ourselves. But even more so as a therapist, that we are the most important vehicle, most important therapeutic tool in the room for co-regulation and all of that. And if we're not well, then like we can't really do the work. So I feel like a lot of that is about, looking after this. And I think like the moment to moment being aware of like, am I really depleted or am I actually feeling good? Saying, I really need this right now. The run around day is one example. Like, right now at this time in my life, I need that. And I should give it to myself, giving myself permission to do the things that I need instead of like, shove it under the carpet. And if we want this car to continue to run, we need to constantly giving that fuel to ourselves. And it means that the regular exercise, and it means that like, catching up with our friends and meeting our own needs. And I think coming from a collective culture, I think a lot of the time it feels like the self-care sounds a bit more like you look after yourself, but sometimes it also means that we actually need to connect with other people, to be in the community, to connect with other fellow therapists or like, your friends and all of that. It actually means that like all of those are caring for this person on the therapist chair, and proactively allowing ourselves to meet ourselves where we are at, and actually meeting that needs is really important. And the other point I wanted to say is that my version of self-care might look different from other people, and that is okay. And everyone will have different interests and different spiritual belief and cultural belief, and it's okay to do the things that is right for you. And as long as you are making yourself happy, you are giving joy to yourself, and you are being compassionate to yourself, and you are doing things that makes you really rejuvenated and replenished within yourself, I think that's really important.
Practically, that can literally be starting the morning with, what am I needing today?
Yeah. That self-attunement.
Self-attunement. And perhaps like today is not the best day to keep pushing myself because of my chronic pain. And perhaps that's the day to slow down, and it is totally okay to change your appointments or like to to change your structure, routine, and be flexible. I think a lot of the times with the head heavy is we constantly meeting expectations and wanting ourselves to do as planned. I think I'm good. I like the idea, and I would like to be more of a planner person myself. But sometimes plans can change, and we can be comfortable with the planning so that we can actually meet ourselves every moment where we are at. Yeah. I think like to build in that flexible repertoire, and instead of like being fixed, and we remain open, and part of the ways that I continue to allow myself to be more open of actively making space for what's going on here and my body, and what do I need, and what do my family need, because we have a young family, and it's constantly adjusting and being flexible and allowing changes to take place, rather than like, being fixed that like I need to do this. Usually it's too much, like, exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
Which is hard when especially if you're already burnt out, because obviously your thinking becomes even more rigid. But the more of that space that you make for attunement, the more, even if it's just, a minute in the shower to think through, how's everything feeling today? Should I go for that run, or should I just, should today be a stretch day or whatever? It allows space then for the more flexible thinking, and allows the space to be more adaptable as plans change, because of course they're going to change. But you can deal with that if you've got a little bit in reserve.
Definitely.
Monique?
Yeah, I totally agree that self-attunement is like a foundational skill in terms of the self-care, that gives us the space to actually align with what we need that day, that minute, that hour. And I think for me, the most important thing that I've really learned over the last few years is there is no right way of self-care. We like to go, what's the right way? We love doing our research. If you have a look on the Facebook groups, people are constantly asking, like, how many clients are people seeing a day? When do you have your breaks? When do you do this? And it's wonderful to ask your peers and to lean on, but to know that actually someone else's schedule might not work for you at all. Right? So that self-attunement in terms of what's happening for me at the moment and what's happening overall and what do I need is a foundational skill. And there's no perfect way of taking care of ourselves. And self-care as a term has had a lot of stigma, hasn't it? It seems a bit like yawn, boring. And so I like to think about nurturing ourselves and just focusing on those micro self-care actions that we can do in the moment as a basis. Because if we're doing that self-attunement, if we're noticing where we're at right now and what we need, usually it's just action. And if we can do that lots of times throughout the day, that's going to build something much more sustainable than if we go, okay, you know what, I'm going to take a week off every 10 weeks and go to Bali. Great. But what happens, the rest of the time, those holidays, and like you said, Danielle, like planning your leave is like vital, as well as having these micro activities. Like for myself, just before this started, I think I said to you ladies, I'm not feeling 100%. And I realised, okay, my body actually needs to stand up. I can't sit down. So I'm at my standing desk. And this is the kind of thing I do regularly. So no one can see. I've got my shoes off. I'm standing up. And that's okay. Like past me would have said, oh, that's not professional. You have to sit down with your shoes on when you're doing something like this. But you get better at going, actually, no, I don't have to. And even, like I deserve to feel good while I'm doing this as well, right? And also just the question of how can I do this in the easiest way? Sometimes we overcomplicate topics like this and we think, okay, I need X, Y, and Z and 5 million things for it to work, rather than, okay, what's a simple, small thing I can do right here.
No, that is so true. And that was, I think that was in part one. We had that where I'm like, if you're noticing you're really achy or whatever at the end of the day, check your chair and you're like, or stretch.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And ideally, if we can build in the routines, that's awesome. But like the first part of the routine might be just, having a Post-it note on your laptop. So when you open it, it says, how are you going today?
Yeah.
And you can always build on it, right? As you get good, and that's something that you can do with ease, and you don't need to remember to do that. Then maybe you do another little step at the beginning of the day where maybe you do a couple of stretches or put your diffuser on. And you can always build. Sometimes we go for the big things and try and then we sort of had to cut them down. Whereas I like to kind of go, let's just build up slowly. And even if we stay here, that's still cool.
Literally, the first change I made when I started like implementing Sparks for myself was buying a thermos. Not a thermos. It's a thermos. So, but not to keep things warm, to keep things cold. So I like drinking ice water. Normal water, meh. But ice water I'm all about. So instead of going, because then it would come to, I want to get some water. I can't be bothered going and getting ice and do it. Blah, blah, blah. Now I just fill this up in the morning and it's icy all day. And it was just one little thing, but suddenly I was drinking more water. So, I had to get up and go to the bathroom more. So I was moving more. So I started to had a little bit more space in the day instead of just going straight into the next thing. A little bit more space to go,
it's that positive flow-on effect, isn't it? And we can really overdo self-care to the point where we can be burnt out doing our self-care just by ticking off the boxes. I read that this and this is good, so I'll do these, rather than really doing what you said and tuning into, like, what do I actually need? What's going to be useful for me now?
It is that. I mean, definitely, I can definitely understand, and I've seen in people who come from collectivist cultures, it is very much that it's selfish to look after yourself, or it's selfish to do things for yourself, booking yourself in for the dentist instead of taking your kids to the park or something. I don't know. But, it could be seen that way. But women in general, I think as well, have that idea that doing something for myself instead of my family or my kids or my parents or my clients or my whoever, you definitely don't have to be a therapist to relate to that one.
And that flexibility.
That flexibility and that compassion, because self-compassion breeds compassion for others. So the better able you are to be compassionate towards yourself, the more headspace you have to show that compassion to others anyway.
Yeah. And I think
sorry.
That I was going to say that compassion, there is this active component of removing that suffering from yourself or from other people. And so I think like it needs to benefit you and also other people, but it really have to start from you first. And if our self-sacrificing schema is in the way of us, like, removing suffering from ourselves or giving ourselves joy, then that's the first homework that we need to do first for ourselves, so that we can face to actually help other people. And I think that is really fundamental, that like, yes, culturally people are going to say that like, oh, it's really selfish and all of that. But we have learned from our personal experience and also from, looking at other people, knowing that this is not going to be sustainable. And we have to learn to pluck all of those things away from our own pain first, so that we can actually help other people, so that we can have space, like that love into other people.
Yeah, and that flexibility, Poe, that you talked about before is so important, that permission to change depending on what's happening for you today. When I first started private practice in particular, I was like, I want to be a reliable person, and that means never changing an appointment no matter what. And then I saw some colleagues kind of go, actually, I'm, going to push this appointment back, or someone cancelled later in the day. I'm going to see if my other clients can come a little bit earlier. And I was shocked.
Yeah.
I reflected on why I was shocked and, chatted with my colleagues, and they said, like, often people love that. And they like being flexible and doing that for us, and then they know they get it in return. And so sometimes it could be just saying, to a client, is it okay if you come 15 minutes later, because you might notice actually you're quite hungry or you're a little bit tired, or you've got someone in the waiting room and you just let them know, I'll be with you in a couple of moments, just so you can sit there and do some deep breathing or something really simple. And I think that when we pass that message on to our clients, hey, I'm doing this to take care of myself, it really does give them permission to do the same thing, right?
Yeah. I've started sessions that way sometimes, and just sort of said, look, I'm guessing from past sessions that you're probably carrying a bit today, and I'm feeling it a bit today too. Why don't we start with like a 2-minute grounding exercise?
Yeah.
And we both do that, and that self-regulation becomes right there in the forefront, but we're both benefiting from that as well. And I'm modeling that I've noticed, and I'm doing something about it, and it doesn't take a lot of time.
No. Yeah. And so we can be using self-care tools in the consult room as well, can't we, with our clients? That's another thing that often we don't think of. It's like it's got to be outside, but actually we can do it with clients in session too. For sure. And they usually, again, I've found them very appreciative. That might not be the right word, but they seem to get a lot out of it as well. There's something very, I suppose, validating as well. That, they struggle with this as well. Like that's okay. And it doesn't have to be a week in Bali. It can be, maybe I just need to remember to breathe a bit more. Yeah, well, we can do both too. But there's nothing wrong with a week in Bali. But the interesting thing is, how many people, for me, it was definitely true. It might be true for you guys. And I know that there will be people watching that it is true for. When you finally have that week in Bali, you spend the whole week sick because you've worked yourself like crazy. Oh, but I'm going to be away next week, so I just need to do this, and I just need to do this, and I'll just finish this, and I'll just get this done. And you push yourself like crazy in the lead up, and then you collapse during the whole holiday. That's not fun. That's not. No, I like to think when you're pushing through, and you're pushing through, is exactly the time you need to pause. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It's when you can come back to yourself, for sure. And because we were that was one of the things that was like sort of the second point. What to do when you're already at capacity. I think a lot of this is what you do when you're already at capacity. It's all about the small, identifying one, that there's a problem, very useful, and then identifying, well, what's my particular vulnerability? What's an area that am I a self-sacrificer? Am I perfectionistic? Do I say yes way more than I actually want to? Or do I say no to the fun stuff more than I actually want to? Yeah. And the question that I kind of add on from there. So the initial one, that morning check-in, how am I doing? What are all of my parts needing today? And adding in before you make a decision, before you choose the next thing in your day, is this choosing old path and maintaining that vulnerability, maintaining the self-sacrificing or the perfectionism or the whatever, or is this choosing something different? And with those two questions, what am I needing right now and which path am I going to choose next? It changes everything.
Yeah.
Definitely. Even if you choose the old path, even if you're like, you know what, today I am going old path. Exactly. It's a mindful choice then, isn't it? Exactly. So any other key points there in terms of when you're already at capacity? I was going to just hook on to something that Poe said in terms of the compassion. And we talked about this in part 1, but it was that relational stance of like, if my psychologist was feeling like this, because this is a question I ask myself, what would I like for them? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really good question, isn't it? Yeah. And I have a question written down as well. The questions that I ask myself is it out of fear or is it out of love? And I a lot of the times, like when I'm overwhelmed and, I'm pushing myself out of like towards, I need to do this. I need to do this. When I have a moment, it is usually out of fear of losing something, or like out of fear of like, the repercussions of like, what if I didn't do it? And, or whether it is a people pleasing patterns coming back again, or whether it is self-sacrificing patterns coming back again, or is it from a grounded space of love? I chose to do this because of, compassion towards myself or other people, or so I guess like it is like tuning into, this is driven by fear and overwhelm or shame, or is it driven by, I want to do it and it is consistent with my values and I can look after myself at the same time while I'm doing this, then I'm okay to do it. But if it's like, I can't not do it because other people is going to judge me, and then that's perhaps is more out of the fear, and that's the way the self-compassion needs to kick in to support ourselves so that we can remain steady and grounded again. So I think when we are already at capacity, we don't need to do more. We just need to bring back that being again. And instead of like doing more to tick off the list, and perhaps it's just to press the brake and check in with ourselves again and see what we need. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And it's also being able to step back and going, what can I drop actually? What can I do less of? And even with some things that are really helpful, like supports, right? Relationship is reciprocally supportive. And so it is good to go at the moment, who would I feel good at being around? And being on our colleagues or friends that are most supportive at that time.
Yeah.
Because they encourage us towards that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Actions.
Yeah. And knowing
outside of that.
Yeah. And which is part of knowing, again, that who does make me feel seen and validated, celebrated, not tolerated. Because a lot of us, if we are falling back on old pathways, that can include going for help to people who are not actually going to be helpful. Like 100%. The client who, had a very, very, very difficult relationship with her mother. Yet anytime she got into trouble, the first person she wanted to call was her mother, who was just going to beat her up about it. But that old pathway was like, you've got to try and get some help and support from her because she's your mother and that's what you do. It's really, it's such a useful way to think about that decision making. Am I doing this from fear or love? And do I need to then be doing it? Even if I am doing it from love, do I need to be the one to do it? Could I delegate this to someone else? They may not do it exactly how I want, but could they do it?
Yeah. I think like that dropping that ball, and sometimes we say that like mindful dropping the ball. There are certain balls that we can drop and it will still be okay. And there are, perhaps our self is the glass ball that we can't drop because, this is the most fragile part perhaps if we're not careful. But there are certain balls that we carry with us, and what it is expectations of the society, that expectations or the schema that we have to be supportive, and perhaps like when we belong to a certain like Facebook group or community, like we have to always be supportive, but maybe we don't have to all the time. I remember one of the things that I was thinking, like, can I drop this? Because I'm connected to one of the Facebook community and I've always quite active there. But then I realized that this is taking a lot of my time. And perhaps one of the things that I can drop is to not be so active in that community anymore. And that is okay, and giving myself permission to like drop that ball. Instead of thinking that I have to be like like it is, or is it out of love? Yeah.
And even catching those have tos or shoulds or, you know, need to, all of those, they're sort of the points where we can mindfully ask ourselves that question, though, isn't it? Is this fear or love? That's often when the perfectionism is really kicking in, when we're at that stage.
And in all of those domains, in the personal domains, so what are my haves and shoulds and expectations of myself personally? What are the professional shoulds and have tos, and which ones do I accept as, you know, I always say, you know, our ethics, I did ethics in undergrad, honours, masters, and then the first organisation I worked with, they gave us ethics things like every 6 weeks, and pretty much every single one boiled down to don't sleep with your patients. And I'm like, I get it. I swear but that's not the kind of ethical dilemma that the majority of us are going to face. Instead, why don't we look at the stuff like the actual expectations, the actual dilemmas that might come up professionally and within organizations and things, and how to manage those more effectively or you know, with less cost. Because it's there's shoulds and have tos personally, professionally, and within organizations. And if we're not paying attention, if we're not attuning to what they are and where they're coming from, we just accept them as fact. Just think that's just the way it's supposed to be.
So I'm diverting it back to what you said at the beginning, Danielle, but that question around, you know, what about the sort of profession that might be contributing or organisations? And definitely our profession does require us to jump through a lot of hoops that are sort of like shifting all the time, and it can easily trigger off some of those schemas that many of us have, you know, like the parenting standards and the self-sacrifice. And so it is about looking at that and realistically, what can you do? So, you know, you just have to look at any of the Facebook groups now. If you open up, there'll be thousands of trainings we can do.
Doesn't mean you need any of them.
Exactly. Coming back to what you need in terms of your things, we can feel quite overwhelmed by the competencies, and this is where the supports can help keep us in check, can't they, in terms of realistic to do.
I think sometimes, I mean, comparison can be deadly, can be really, you know, the antithesis of happiness in a lot of cases. But also sometimes I think it's because we're minimizing what we're already doing well. So we think it's the next training, or I don't know this well enough, or where if you do look at, the new competencies coming in that a lot of people are feeling very freaked out about, there's nothing in there that we shouldn't already kind of be doing, you know. They've named some things more explicitly than they have in the past, but really there's not a lot that you probably shouldn't already be doing, and that you're probably not already doing quite naturally.
No, it might be just reflecting on that and even documenting, right? Like have a self-care policy for yourself. And it can include the things that we've talked about today in terms of leave planning and reflective questions you can ask yourself.
That's a self-care policy.
That's it. That's it. And you can change it. You can come back to that and look at it, you know, every 6 months, every 12 months, and make adjustments depending on where you're at. So the last question we were going to try and cover, which we've only got a few minutes, haven't we, is how do we keep this conversation alive? Because it's not something that we want to sort of just tick the box and that's it. It is part of a competency 3, but we're expected to weave it through every aspect of our work. So it's really important that we keep this conversation going, not just us three, even though it's great we have these chats, but outside of this. Danielle, have you got ideas?
Well, in our own group supervision sessions and individual supervision, I like to start now with, we have our diamonds and coal or roses and thorns moment. So we actually share a win, rather than jumping in with, I'm struggling with this, I'm stuck with this, I'm whatever, but we actually acknowledge what's going well with some of our cases or with some of our learning or whatever it might be. That all by itself has made such a difference to the feeling within the sessions, and has allowed some of that compassion and I suppose positive comparisons to grow as well, to see like, oh yeah, well, I do that and that person's doing it and it's working well, so I'm doing that too, this is good. It just changes the energy of the sessions so much. And pushing through and naming the eye roll, I think, or you said with self-care, eye roll, you said something about self-care being the like
yeah,
which I get. I name it now. If I'm doing the presentations or anything, I started one recently. I had this group and it was predominantly guys, and they looked so underwhelmed about being there, and they were like arms crossed and they were kind of like looking up at the ceiling and stuff. So I sort of said, yeah, I know self-care sucks, but this isn't your normal self-care. I just really want to start us with a chant where we ground ourselves into the earth and become trees. And their faces, it was so funny. It was so funny. I'm like, kidding. No, that's not self-care. That might be self-care for some people, but that's not, but just sort of naming the elephant in the room, I guess, that self-care traditionally has been horribly misrepresented. And it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Hope?
I guess like it is an ongoing thing, isn't it? Like it's not something that like, oh, we've covered that in the CPD and we don't have to look at it anymore. And I think instead of like looking at it as like a check box to tick off, and it is an ongoing reflection and ongoing changes that we can make for ourselves. And I guess it is, the more we talk about it, the more we are aware of it, then like we can make adjustment as we go. It's kind of like a parallel process all the time in everything we do, whether we are therapists or not. Like that is an ongoing relational process that we have to be aware of. And maybe let's not wait until we are burned out, then we look at all of this. Let's do it, ongoing, checking in with ourselves, with our colleagues, and in supervision, and instead of like, just wait until things break.
Absolutely. Monique?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of the above, and sharing what we're doing and sharing how we're going without shame. Like if you're having a bad day, it's okay to share that with your colleague and say, and so I'm doing this. Or asking for some ideas. When colleagues don't look okay, it is checking in with them as well, because a lot of us have sort of masked with this idea that I must look okay, everyone around me is okay. Also, I'm a psychologist, so, I shouldn't experience difficulties ever. Always,
if I should, I can just snap out of it.
Exactly. So it's just being really honest with where you are, and also just sharing the little things that we're doing, not to influence other people to do the same, but just to inspire others to also check in with where they're at and what they need. There's lots of great things here that we've shared, and we've got lots of similarities with things, and there's also differences in terms of what you might need on any particular day or at any particular time. And the more we can share these, we can inspire each other with it.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe I did up a little dopamine menu, a little Sparks dopamine menu for mental health awareness last week. But maybe we could do our own little self-care rebellion version of that and pop it in the description or something or other, a link to it. I'll and certainly when I send the replay out to people on the list, we'll include some follow-up practical resources just to think of those little ways, because it really is, it's those little things. As much as we want the checklist, as much as we want if I just do this, then I'll be fine, it just doesn't work like that. I promise it doesn't, or it would have worked much better for me by now, because I'm very good at following lists. But yeah, this keep the conversation going. And if you end up talking to someone who doesn't respond well, who judges or says burnout isn't a thing or calls you a snowflake or some crap like that, just knock that down to, well, I'm talking to the wrong person. This is not a person who is going to be in my group, in my mob, in my tribe, and I need to connect with other people who actually get it. And that could be one of the three of us, but there will definitely be people, like just from the number of comments and things we got, there is a lot of people out there feeling exactly the same way who would be very happy to talk to you, I am sure. Anything else before you guys have to head off?
I was just going to say, it's also knowing we can feel good regularly. Like not even when we're, edging on burnout, we can do these things regularly, so we can introduce, like what Poe said, that joy a little bit more regularly. It actually can be something that is at the front of mind, so we can keep doing these things to feel good more often.
Yeah. And you're going to notice when you're feeling good.
That's exactly right. Because historically, I guess most of us, it's been only at a crisis time where we've gone, oh, self-care, whereas now it can be front of mind, so we can feel good more often, hopefully. Hope.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for joining us again, ladies, and thank you to everybody watching live or watching the replay. It's amazing. I think maybe that's the biggest takeaway for me from going from 5 years ago being terrified to say this out loud to the more I talk about it, the easier it becomes to talk about, and the more people I meet who get it. It's amazing. It feels really, really good all by itself, just having other people to go, oh, wait, it's not just me. So just talk about it. It does get easier. It gets much easier.
Yeah. I almost feel that is the collective care rather than self-care. It feels like, from feeling like it, that we do, experience burnout and silently by ourselves. Let's lean on each other and support each other, and together, that knowing that there are all of these caveats to our profession, but there are also things that we can do together, that we are not alone in this journey, and it's okay to lean on each other and talk about it. And
and that's gorgeous. And not that you have to fix your colleague or whatever who's saying, I'm feeling a bit bad today, or I'm burning out or whatever. So you don't have to fix it. That just being there is having the conversation. That's everything sometimes. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
I'm so grateful to you both and your wisdom, and it's always fun to have these chats together.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Burnout's knocking